ياسين والقرآن الحكيم.
And he said to me, finish the Surah Al-Hajj and I'm going to take you to Hajj. So I'd get up at night when the lights were all off and everyone's sleeping, and I'd take my mushaf and I'd go to the fridge and I'd open the fridge. I said to him, I want to meet Sheikh Sudais al-Shuraim.
And at this time, you still can't read.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Yani, as you mentioned, of course, my parents, my father was born in Lebanon, and during the civil war in Lebanon, he was forced to leave, and he made his way to Australia. Some other relatives were in Australia, so it made sense to just go there. And subhanAllah, I have an older brother who was born a year before in Lebanon. So as soon as my parents landed in Australia, I was born. And so I was born in Australia. I was raised in Australia for the first almost 18, 19 years of my life. At the very beginning, when we arrived to Australia and we were growing up, I still remember my father teaching us Al-Quran and getting us to memorize the ayat of the Quran. We started with Juz' Amma, and then he was an imam of a local masjid, and he set up a competition for the local Muslim community. So every year in Ramadan, he'd announce of a competition, and the first year he began this competition, it was Surah Al-Baqarah. So there was an announcement among the Muslim community that the masjid in Lakemba, Masjid al-Sunnah, now called Masjid al-Sunnah, is going to have a competition in Surah Al-Baqarah. People, you have a year or whatever it is until Ramadan to get ready. And of course, my father had us participate in the competition. So we began to memorize, and he'd help us memorize Surah Al-Baqarah. And I remember it was always after Salat al-Fajr. So I remember after Salat al-Fajr, especially, my father used to get us to sit, me, my brothers and sisters, and he'd read the ayat for us, and he'd ensure that we had memorized them. By the time the sun rose, we'd go to school. And even in winter, he'd have the heater turned on, and we're sitting in front of the heater, and he's reading the ayah, and we're memorizing. That's how it was for Surah Al-Baqarah.
At home?
At home. At home.
So wait, you guys, he didn't start at home with the cute surahs, the short ones at the back?
Those, we did them, but I can't remember when we did them. These were when we were young.
So this was the first serious start at Baqarah. And how old were you roughly at this time?
About 10. We were 10 years old. We began with Surah Al-Baqarah. And then Ramadan would come, and the competition would be set up, and the participants would come, and we'd be questioned, about 5 questions. My father had a number of mashayikh with him as well that would form a panel, and they'd ask questions from the surah. So for example, read from قوله تعالى سيقول السفهاء من الناس. And then you were expected to continue reading until the judge says stop. And like this, 5, 6 questions. And at the end, the results were announced on the 27th night of Ramadan. I remember it was a very exciting time because all the prizes and all the gifts were purchased, and they were put at the front of the masjid where the mimbar is, and they were covered with a blanket. And as children, but you can't focus. You're praying and you're looking at what's behind this, what am I going to get, what's my gift, what's that? And then my father comes up and he begins to announce who came first, who came second, who came third, and there were lots of prizes. I remember one of my prizes was a race car that was electric. You'd build the track, you'd put the car on it, and it goes and it comes, and it was interesting.
Must have been a big deal back in the day to have electric race car.
There was nothing other than these electronical matters that people were distracted with and played with. And this is what happened.
So how did you do in the competition, the Surah Al-Baqarah one?
I didn't do great. I didn't do well because Surah Al-Baqarah was a long surah, and the passion for memorization hadn't yet settled in my heart.
Okay, so you were doing it because Baba sat you down.
That's it.
And you have to do it.
Just for
Was
that.
there a consequence, like if you don't wake up, if you don't sit down?
So I remember my father.
Would he incentivize you guys, or would there be?
He'd show frustration.
Okay.
If we didn't memorize, if we didn't complete our part. And we'd be frustrated as well because after Fajr, we'd want to go to sleep.
Okay. So you're
But
being
during
held.
Yeah. But there was none of that, sit down, we finish the prayer, and we begin to read. And here's like a very important point. I always try to teach this to the parents. Don't be hurt or don't feel guilty when you see your children crying or feeling frustrated and agitated when you're sitting them down and reading Quran with them or giving them an Islamic lesson or teaching them a hadith. Because later on, when they grow up, they'll appreciate every minute, every hour, every second spent when you are teaching them. And a child doesn't know better. Child knows rest, play, sleep, and he doesn't know that this is an age of learning. And that's why the parents are parents. They're supposed to guide. They're supposed to instill discipline with the child. They're supposed to teach him that this is an age of learning. This is an age of memorization. These are the years in where you're supposed to learn. So they need to be firm upon this. And if they see their children frustrated, angry, they may change the way, but never to cancel the lesson or cancel the Quran classes that they send their kids to. No, I always recall on this point, and I make a comparison. Sometimes when parents send their children to kindergarten and they want to capture that moment. So the first time they send their child to the classroom, the child is crying because doesn't want to detach from his parents. And the parents are sitting at the gate, they're crying as well. Oh, I'm going to miss my child, and he's crying, and they get over it because they're thinking that this is what is supposed to happen. But when the child goes to the Quran class, right, and they see him crying and so on, they say, they blame the teacher, they blame the system, they're too much for him, pull him out. Why didn't you pull him out from the school? So why did we accept it for the school and we didn't accept it for a Quran class? So the idea is the most important knowledge for a child is the Quran. It's the Islamic studies. That upbringing is what is going to benefit him later on in his life. So you need to be patient upon the children. And I appreciate that from my father. He was patient upon us. He never gave up. Despite us showing frustration, he never gave up. Every single day, there was a Quran lesson. And we'd memorize. You like it, you don't like it, you need to memorize.
There was a level of consistency and discipline modeled by the parent. And naturally, as children, I have to wake up again. And you have to go through that. Children are children. There's absolutely no world in which a child is going to be so excited to wake up at 5 a.m. and memorize something.
Sure.
But maybe over time, at some point, the switch will flick and they'll start to understand what they're doing, or they'll appreciate the love and appreciate the meanings or appreciate the depth of the words of Allah. But a 10, 9, 8-year-old just wants to play ultimately. So it requires a lot of patience from the father's side.
Yes.
Over time.
Right.
And then, so you're doing these Quran competitions every year?
Every
Ramadan?
Every Ramadan. At the beginning of Ramadan, we are doing the tasmiyah, we're doing the competition, and end of Ramadan, the prizes and the winners are announced.
And it's a different surah every year?
So the first year was Surah Al-Baqarah, second year was Surah Al-Imran, then it was Surah Al-Nisa, Surah Al-Ma'idah. And I still have the certificates at home. For all these surahs, we were given a certificate as well, certificate of participation and what rank you came.
Did your father ever get annoyed or upset about the results? My kids didn't come first.
Never. My father was always happy that we participated and that we continued the journey of memorizing, and we were always there. And I think the reward aspect was a big deal, because being the son of my father, obviously the one who set all this up, I can see what they're doing in the background. So him and his group, his friends, they were very particular on this matter. What gifts we're getting, who's getting what are we getting him? He'd ask us, what do you want, right? So they paid attention to this matter, because that's the reward. That's going to be what is going to fulfill us at that age, and that was taken very seriously, And then as the years advanced, it was then cash that was given, and that was also something that we looked forward to. So that continued until Surah Al-Nisa, Al-Ma'idah, Al-An'am, and we get to Surah Al-A'raf.
And the style of memorization so far is, you start in the morning, your father recites the ayah, You guys repeat the ayah after him?
repeat
Or
after.
repeat?
Yeah.
And it's basically through listening,
That's it.
through talqeen, what they call
Yeah.
talqeen.
Me, I didn't know how to read yet. I was very lazy. I didn't like learning to read. I didn't like the Arabic language, reading it. I felt it very heavy. And every time I'd read, I'd stumble. You know, I wasn't reading fluently. And you know, when you don't read fluently and something is heavy upon your tongue, you get bored, you give up. You don't have patience for it.
Your siblings progressed in their reading.
My brother was reading. My sister was able to read, I remember. I remember my brother was able to read really well. Whereas myself, even when it came to Ramadan, and my father is sitting reading his juz' every day so that they can finish the Quran Ramadan, I'd sit next to him and try to just read when he's reading so that I can move, you know, because we had to read a juz'. And when it came for myself, I'd skip pages because I didn't want to read them, you know. It was too difficult and I just give up. But it was always my father being on top of us that enabled me to continue carrying the mushaf, having it in my hand and making an attempt. So we memorized all the way up until Surah Al-A'raf. This is where I remember things are going to start changing at Surah Al-A'raf. And Jazakallah khair, we had a Sheikh that set up a halaqah in the masjid, and we used to attend that after Salat al-Maghrib. And we were a halaqah. And he'd read half a page, and we'd read it, and we had to memorize it, and we come like 2-3 days later, and we do tasmiyah. Now this is when the memorizing moved from the house to the masjid. So we started memorizing in al-masjid. When it came to Surah Al-A'raf, I began to memorize, and I reached the قوله تعالى. I still remember إن ربكم الله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض في 6 أيام ثم استوى على العرش يغشي الليل النهار يطلبه حثيثا. I got to this ayah. That week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it was my turn to go to my grandparents' house and spend the weekend there. So we used to have this thing between me and my brother. 1 week, he'd spend those nights, a weekend at my grandparents' house, and the second week would be me. And that's how we'd do it. That week, it was my turn. So I went to my grandparents' house, and I still remember clearly. It was nighttime. I had finished the shower. I went to where I usually sleep, in my uncle's rooms. And there was a cassette player. And there was the cassette of the Quran for Sheikh Al-Sudais Al-Shuraim of Salat Al-Taraweeh, recording 1993 recording. I put one in and I pressed play. Heck, like that, I just pressed play. And I began to listen to the recitation. Wallahu Akbar, I felt something I had never ever felt before it with the Quran.
الذين يقولون ربنا أخرجنا من هذه القرية الظالم أهلها واجعل لنا من لدنك وليا واجعل لنا من لدنك نصيرا.
ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم.
The feeling was a feeling of, you know, the sound when Shaykh Al-Shuraim, mashallah, he's known when he recites, or Shaykh Al-Sudais recite. And I'm thinking, I'm picturing, because the folder, the cassette, it had a picture of Mecca on the front cover. And I'm thinking, this man is leading a salat in Mecca, and, you know, how beautiful does it sound? And he's memorized the Quran. Why can't I memorize the Quran like he's memorized the Quran? So, you know, I made a commitment that night. I'm listening, and I made a commitment. I said, I'm going to memorize the Quran.
Ajib.
Heck, it was that night. And there was, my uncles weren't in the room yet. They were still out. They hadn't come back. I was by myself. And I'm saying, I want to memorize the Quran. And what a beautiful voice this is.
It was a moment of inspiration, but from the listening as opposed to anything else.
Yeah.
Was it the first time you listened to the Quran outside of your father or somebody reciting? Were recordings popular at the time?
This was the first time I listened to Shaykh Al-Sudais Al-Shuraim. Okay. So we've heard the Quran before, especially to Shaykh Al-Manshawi, because my dad loves to listen to Shaykh Al-Manshawi. It's a beautiful recitation. But I did not connect in the same way I connected when I heard Sheikh Sudais or Shuraim. So it was incredible. And keep in mind that at this time, I don't know how to read on my own, to grab a mushaf and read a page fluently. Impossible. I'd make 100 mistakes by the time I get to the end of the page. But I know the letters, I know Fatha, Kasra, Dhamma, but to put it all together, it was very difficult, like really beginner's level. So I quickly planned that the only way I can memorize this would be my listening. So I'm going to listen, and I'll pause, and I'll repeat what was read, and then I'll play again for the next part.
And you'd have to manually rewind.
You had to manually.
There was no
there's no
Tarteel AI like, and repeat 3 ayahs infinite times. No, you had to rewind, play, pause, rewind.
You know, like this generation won't know what cassette means. Cassette is, how are we going to describe it?
I'm going to have to show them.
Put it somewhere up on the screen what a cassette looks like. Yeah.
So you'd pause, rewind?
Not yet. We haven't started yet. But I just made the commitment that night. I'm going to memorize the Quran. So I still remember that night, I got a paper and a pen, and I began to plan how I'm going to memorize the Quran. And I said, I'm going to start from Surah Al-A'raf. I'm going to start again from the beginning. Because just like all the previous surah, I had memorized and forgot. I didn't revise Surah Al-Baqarah, Al-Imran, all those years. So it's there, but it's not there. And the first few pages of Surah Al-A'raf was in the same attitude. It's there, but it's not there. I'm not revising. I didn't have that passion. I didn't want to memorize. Until that moment. So I said, you know what? It sounded very difficult that I start from Surah Al-Baqarah. I said, I don't want to do that. Because I thought that if I go back, I'm just repeating what I did years ago, and I'm going to be turned off. I said, I'm going to start from Surah Al-A'raf. That's something I don't know. That's something we're doing for this year's competition. I'm going to start from Surah Al-A'raf. So I drew a plan that it was early in the year, and I put a plan. Every day I'm going to memorize 1 page. Every day I'll memorize 1 page, 1 page, 1 page. I put the entire plan together. And it turns out that by the end of the year, I was going to reach to Surah Al-Hajj. And even if you get the old mushaf I have that I still memorized from, at the top of that page, I wrote, Insha'Allah Akhir as-Sana. On Surah Al-Hajj, up the top, it's written, Insha'Allah Akhir as-Sana.
On the mushaf.
Yeah. And the way I wrote it was, Insha'Allah, the wrong way. No, I connected the noon to the sheen. And you can see my father had rubbed it and wrote in as one word, Insha'Allah. So I couldn't wait to see my father when I go back home to tell him what I'm actually planning. And I was that excited. Wallahi, I was so excited that night. I slept. I got up the next morning. I began. And I memorized the first page of Surah Al-A'raf. And I had never, ever memorized a page like this before. And the way I memorized it was now, we had the cassette. I'd put the cassette in. I'd press play. And a part of the ayah is recited. ألف لام ميم صاد كتاب أنزل إليك فلا يكن في صدرك حرج منه لتنذر به وذكرى للمؤمنين. That was too long. So I'd stop it in the middle, pause, and I'd repeat it. I'd look in the mushaf. كتاب أنزل إليك فلا يكن في صدرك كتاب أنزل إليك فلا يكن في صدرك كتاب أنزل إليك فلا يكن في صدرك. Then I'd put my head up. ألف لام ميم صاد كتاب أنزل إليك فلا يكن في صدرك. طيب يلا play. حرج منه لتنذر به وذكرى للمؤمنين. Yalla, stop. حرج منه لتنذر. And I'd repeat. For me,
how many times would you repeat?
Maybe 5 times.
Okay.
5 times, and then I'd be able to look up and read just the part that I repeated. Then to connect it together, I'd probably read it another 5, 6, 7 times.
The whole ayah together.
Yeah. Then I'd be able to put my head up and read it and not make a mistake. And I'd move on to the next ayah. All the way until reach the end of the page. Sheikh, it'd take me not more than 30 to 40 minutes. I'd be finished. 30, 40 minutes, I'd be done with the whole page. I give it an hour, 2 hours, I've forgotten everything. It's like I've forgotten everything. Then I'd go again in the evening. I'd read it again, and then it becomes strong. In like 10, 15 minutes, I'll strengthen it again. Then what I realized over time, when I slept the night and got up the next morning, and read it 2, 3 times, it became solid. So that I worked it out. I figured out that I need to sleep, and it's like the sediments are going to, the ayat are just going to settle, and you come back the next morning and everything will be solid.
The psychologists, they call it spaced repetition. They say that you don't memorize something in your long-term memory immediately. The first time you memorize it, it's in your short-term working memory. It disappears in the next 2-3 hours. But if you repeat it the next day, and then after 3 days, and after 7 days, and after 50, then by the time if you space the repetition out, eventually it becomes in your long-term memory.
SubhanAllah, that's exactly what happened. That's what I experienced.
You worked out the hard way.
SubhanAllah. Yeah, I had no clue what I was going through, what was happening. And I gave it an example, like, imagine I got a container or a jug or a bottle and had water and sand in there. And then you shook it. And then you put it on the table. It takes a while for all that sand to settle, and then the water becomes clear at the top. That's how I imagined it. I thought that overnight is going to be when everything's just going to settle. And that's exactly how it was. And that's why I was always motivated to memorize the next day and the next day, because I know, give it 2-3 days and it would be solid. So that's what I began to do. I went to my father that Sunday, because Sunday night you got to go back home because the next day is school. And I seen my father and I said to him, I'm going to memorize the Quran. And he's just, yeah, yalla memorize. I said, this is my plan. And at the end of the year, I'd reached the Surah Al-Hajj. And wallahi, he was sitting on his computer. And he said to me, finish the Surah Al-Hajj and I'm going to take you to Hajj.
Ya salam.
خلص على سورة الحج وباخذك على الحج.
It's a nice
Subhanallah.
incentive.
Wallahi, that's how it was. So,
And how old were you at this time, roughly?
here I'm 14. About 14 here. We began. I began to memorize. Every single day, a page. And I'd go back to my father. By then, because I left my grandparents' house, that cassette wasn't for me. So it remained at the house. And we didn't have a cassette player. So I told my father, he went and bought me a cassette player. And he got one for me in my room. And then he went to the local bookstore, Islamic bookstore house. It's in Lakemba, it's still there. And he purchased the cassette, recorded Quran for Sheikh Sudais or Shurim. And he came and he gifted it to me. I remember the whole thing. It had 4, 4, 4, 4. So that's about 20 cassettes, the whole Quran. It was for $50. I remember there's a sticker on it that said $50. And he gave it to me. And I put the cassette in for Surah Al-A'raf, and I began with Surah Al-A'raf. Obviously, I'm moving in.
1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the evening.
1 hour, about 40 minutes in the morning.
Before school.
And I'd also do after school, immediately after school. I'd get back from school, straight the cassette in, play, and I'd memorize the page. My brothers, my sisters, everyone else is playing. They weren't doing what I was doing. But I just had this passion. I want to keep going. No pressure. No, my father didn't force me on anything. My mother didn't. I'm just working on my own. Subhanallah, I'd memorize and I'd go to my father and I'd read the page to him. Every day I'd read the page to him. He'd take the copy of my Quran and he has a pencil. And any mistake I did, he'd highlight on it, he'd circle on it. And that mushaf is still with me. And his circles are still on it. And he'd correct my recitation like this. And then at night, when the night would settle, and I tried to read them in bed, I'm confused, because still it's not solid. So I'd get up at night when the lights were all off and everyone's sleeping. And I'd take my mushaf and I'd go to the fridge and I'd open the fridge and I'd look at the ayat just so I can make sure that I'm getting them right, so I can revise them in bed correctly at the light on the fridge.
It sounds like it's fair to say you became obsessed.
Subhanallah, there was an obsession. Yes, I can say that. There was an obsession. There was passion. And subhanallah, Shaykh Hisham, a day before that, a week before that, in the other time I had with the Quran, my heart wasn't there.
And the difference was listening and imagining being there in the haram. And something just clicked, inspiration from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
That night, it was a Friday night. Just there, I don't know what it was. Lakin alhamdulillah, Wallahi forever, I am grateful to Allah Azza wa Jal, because that night there just changed everything. Not that I was bad before that, but it was just, I was just, what would you say? Just bored.
You're going with the flow.
Yeah, stalled. I just don't want to get into that. I see my dad giving khutbah, giving lectures, memorizing here, teaching here, but I'm not into it, not into it, just on the side.
This often happens, we're told that this often happens with the children of mashayikh or people of ilm, is that أزهد الناس في العالم أهله, is that the people who least care about ilm are the family of a alim, because they're like, everybody else is like, wow, your dad's a sheikh, and you're like, well, habibi, like I've seen him in his vest sleeping on the couch, and he's a normal guy for me, and oh yeah, he teaches every day, and I've seen him, and adi, and it's nothing special going on here. But other people are, so it's almost as though due to frequent exposure to ilm, the family of a alim usually are like, well, it's nothing special.
SubhanAllah, they're distant.
But they're distant. They don't have the same effect. However, and even in Islamic history, you have exceptions, but the vast majority of the time, the children of ulama would not be the people who carried the ilm of their parent. But it's almost as though you had to be pulled away from that environment on your own and make your own decision. This is something I want to do. And you made that at the age of 14. And then, so you're memorizing morning, evening, after school. Your siblings might have been wondering what happened to our brother.
Nothing at all. No, they never wondered, they never asked. They just saw me in a routine of memorizing.
And they left you to it.
And because we were all used to memorizing anyway.
It was normalized.
So, they just saw that he's taking things on his own, And in the mornings, I'd always sit in the front when my mum would drive us to school. I'd sit in the front because in the glove box, there was a mushaf. So it was known, my position was in the front. I'd open the glove box, I'd take the Quran out, and I'm revising the ayat as we're driving to school. That was a time where I'd utilize to revise. And then on the way back, the same thing. And I continued this routine. I'd memorize, I'd recite them to my father at night before sleep. And he'd check over them. And I remember when we got to Surah Yusuf, I did it in one day. The whole Surah Yusuf I did in one day. Because I didn't stay on one page anymore. I increased it after like 2 months to 2 pages. I started doing 2 pages. I started doing 3 pages. Surah Yusuf was one of the surah I finished in one day. Surah Al-Shu'ara was also a surah I finished in one day. 10 pages. Surah Al-Shu'ara, I finished it in one whole day, memorizing it. I still remember these moments. And I kept going. Shaykh Hisham, when I got to Surah Al-Zukhruf, I got sick. I remember I got sick. And I stopped. I wasn't able to memorize anymore. And I stopped for like a week, 2 weeks. I couldn't get back on. And even when I reset and I restarted again after Surah Al-Zukhruf, I found it very difficult. Subhanallah. And I reflect over that moment and I say that cutting, that stopping of memorizing makes a massive change. And I started worrying. Like, am I not going? What happened from Surah Al-A'raf all the way to Surah Al-Zukhruf? I got sick. I took a break, a week, 2 weeks. I wasn't able to continue anymore. I was distraught that week. That summer, I was very distraught. And when I wanted to resume, I couldn't. Things became very difficult, subhanAllah. But then I pushed through and I continued to do the same thing I was doing. And I had finished. The end of the year came and I didn't just finish the Surah Al-Hajj. I had finished the Quran. All of it. So I finished the Quran in about 6 to 7 months. It was all finished. And as my dad promised, booked me with him and we went to Al-Hajj. And that was my first Hajj. It was in 2003. And I remember I said to him, I want to meet Sheikh Sudais al-Shuraib. And I memorized the Quran.
Very ambitious. Very ambitious.
SubhanAllah, my dad did everything he can to organize a meeting. There was a sheikh that my dad had a good close relationship with. His name was Shaykh Abdul Rahman Abdul Khaliq. He knew him really well. And he was a Saudi in Jeddah. He said to him, can you organize a meeting, Sheikh Shuraim, for my son? And he organized it. And he gave him a specific location. I don't think his sheikh lives there anymore. But it was Masjid Dhul Nurain, where Shari' al-Tijari is in Mecca. There's a bin Dawood there. Behind it, there is a masjid. It's called Masjid Dhul Nurain. So he said, go there, Asr time, the Sheikh would be praying there. That's his local masjid. Okay. So it was Hajj time. And this is before Hajj. My father and I took a taxi and we went to that masjid. We got in, it was Salat al-Asr, I'm looking around, I can't see him. And I know him, how he looks like, because I used to follow a Salat al-Taraweeh that was broadcasted online, live. The Saudi TV channel was broadcast. I used to follow it. Image quality wasn't that great, but I got to see how his face was. I went to that masjid, we prayed Salat al-Asr. I didn't see him. Subhanallah, me and my dad were praying together. And it was the last rak'ah. And the Imam said, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And I remember I did salam to my right and I saw him. He was the row behind us because he doesn't lead in that masjid. So he was behind us, subhanallah. I saw him. We concluded the salat and then we got up. I told my father, that's him. So he went and he gave him salam and he introduced me to him. Oh, mashallah. Yani,
how did you feel meeting him after all those years, hearing his voice?
It was unbelievable. It was, yani, like, I just felt like, I just want to stay here. I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to be in Mecca. I still remember when we first arrived to Mecca, we prayed Salat al-Fajr. That was my first Salat and it was behind him. He was leading and he read from Surah Ibrahim. And he read from Surah Ibrahim, Alam tara kayfa daraba Allahu mathalan وأدخل, sorry. He read from وأدخل الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها بإذن ربهم تحيتهم فيها سلام. He read that page. And I remember
were you outdoors in the haram?
Yeah.
So when you're outdoors under the sky and you hear that, it's something different.
I was praying next to Maqam Ibrahim.
Oof.
And he
Surah
was
Ibrahim?
in front. Allah, I never thought of that connection.
Surah Ibrahim next to Maqam Ibrahim.
Allah. And I had a brother, his name was Kamal. He was praying right next to me. He came from Australia as well. He was doing Hajj with us. I don't know his story now, where he is. And may Allah Azza wa Jal grant him goodness. But yeah, I walked with him inside Al-Haram and that was my first Salat al-Fajr. And then it was, I think that day or the next day, at Asr, where we met him. And my father said to him, do you have any nasiha for my son? And I remember that he said to me, revise the Quran. Or continue to revise the Quran and do not forget the Quran. لا تنسى القرآن. He said, لا تنسى القرآن. That's all I can remember from many other things that was discussed. We were standing, we didn't sit down. Yani. It was a quick visit, a quick meet.
But it had a big imprint on your mind.
Huge. I don't forget it, subhanallah. You know, and khalas, all that time revising Al-Quran and memorizing had finished. But what was still missing was Surah Al-Baqarah to Surah Al-A'raf. I did that in Hajj.
Okay.
So I started doing this in Hajj. I had purchased it's called an Apple Pod.
Yeah, we're in 2000s now, so things have moved on from the cassettes.
It was an Apple Pod.
The iPod.
It was an iPod, yes.
iPod, yeah.
It was, I think it was called an Apple iPod. Something
it was actually quite a revolution in hardware.
Subhanallah. No. And there was another one that I think I got before. It was called an iRiver.
I remember those as well.
iRiver, yeah. So if people search up iRiver, you'll see it. It's a device, a bit bulky, but you can put the recordings on it. You can upload the recordings into it, and then you can just put the headphones in and you can listen from it, pause and play. Subhanallah. And I did Surah Al-Baqarah all the way through to the end of Surah Al-An'am once again. But this time with this refreshed attitude, and I memorized them and I corrected them, and alhamdulillah, I had finished Al-Quran. And then my father took me to our local masjid, which was Masjid Umar in Auburn. And he got me to lead the prayers there. So I began to lead the prayers. And this was even before I went to Hajj.
And at this time, you still can't read?
Still can't read. If I picked up any other book, I couldn't read. So this was something that the first time I ever read the Quran from cover to cover was the same time I memorized it. I had never read it before. No, never. The first time I had completed cover to cover was the very same time I memorized it as well. Now, so of course the listening made it very easy, you know, because if you don't know how to read and you're listening to someone that you're connecting with in terms of the recitation, yani truly as the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam يعني would encourage من لم يتغنى بالقرآن فليس منا زينوا أصواتكم بالقرآن. And this has an effect. It has an effect. يعني this is hadith Anas. زينوا أصواتكم بالقرآن. Beautify your voices with the Quran. One hadith. Very short. millions and millions from then on up until this day have been implementing this one command of the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
To recite it beautifully, to recite the Quran beautifully.
Of course, it has an effect. It connects with the heart because this is how the Quran should be recited. And so as a result, I can't say that a Sheikh's voice didn't have an impact on me. It definitely had an impact. Listening to his voice, recite the Quran, of course, alongside it being the word of Allah Azza wa Jal, which is unmatched to the word of the creation. That has its own effect as well. As Allah Azza wa Jal said, Allahu nazzala ahsan al-hadith kitaban mutashabihan mathani taqsha'irru. Allah said, تقشعر منه جلود الذين يخشون ربهم ثم تلين جلودهم وقلوبهم إلى ذكر الله. Allah Azza wa Jal in this ayah is speaking that the Quran actually has a physical effect on the bodies. The hairs shiver, they stand up when they hear the word of Allah Azza wa Jal. And then the word penetrates deep beyond the skin until it reaches the hearts. ثم تلين جلودهم. Then the skins of the people that are listening to the Quran rests and relaxes. And then the heart also finds peace and relaxation. تلين جلودهم وقلوبهم إلى ذكر الله. To the dhikr of Allah Azza wa Jal. ذلك هدى الله. That's the guidance of Allah Azza wa Jal. So it has a profound effect now. And that was the journey of
So you started leading Salah.
I started
and
leading
now
Salah.
You still can't read. You're reading Salah, you're about 15, 16?
15, 16, I began to lead the Salah.
This is a new journey now.
It's a new journey.
What are the struggles with leading Salah as someone who's memorized? Was it Taraweeh or just daily?
No, so it was Salat al-Fajr, Salat al-Maghrib, Salat al-Isha, Jahri prayers. Yani. My father would take me to them.
So you were given responsibility at a young age.
Yes,
It was kind of pushed onto you. You were open to it.
Yeah. I felt like this is something that I want to do, you know, and I felt that I can do it, you know. And I was reciting, or subhanAllah, I was reciting, imitating that which I had memorized off. Yani. So Sheikh Sudais, Sheikh Shuraim. I was closer to imitating Shuraim than Sudais, and I found that that's the way I can read the Quran. So I began to recite in the same way he'd recite, and I'd stop where he'd stop in the ayat, and I'd do the ruku' and sujood. I'd do the ruku' where he'd end, you know, because in Salat al-Tarawih they'd end at a certain place, and I can still remember, you know, like before the Allahu Akbar, how the tone will go down at the end of the ayah. So I know that here he'd say Allahu Akbar, so I'd stop there. So yeah, so the idea is that I'm reading with meaning, but I don't even know what the meaning is. But my stops were perfect because I'm following the same stops. So that's how I'd lead the prayers. Yani. Ramadan would come, I'd also lead the Salat al-Tarawih, and alhamdulillah, it moved on from there. Then an international competition in Jeddah was announced. That's the competition of Al-Malik Abdul Aziz, Quran competition. And no one in Australia applied for it. It was only me. So I was I was quickly accepted, and my name was sent to them, and the ticket was booked, and I went. And I began to, I participated. I didn't do really well because still the memorization was very raw.
It hadn't settled.
No. And there were other people that were just masters and pros. And so it took time, but it was good to...
It was exposure.
Yeah, it was excellent.
You saw a different world. You understood what mastery was.
It was beautiful. And at the same time, it had me on a very intense revision plan. On the airplane, I'm revising. That's a very long trip, you know. And I'm revising in the hotel. I'm revising. It's just Quran, just day, night. Everything was Quran. So that was excellent. It was a good push.
Competition seems to be a theme in the story.
No,
as a very important thing that maybe a lot of parents don't actually pick up. That it becomes like an excuse. You use the psychology of a child. Especially boys. Boys are very competitive, maybe girls slightly less so. But use the psychology of a child to force them to encourage them in a very organic way. But it seems like there was a competition at every stage in your life that pushed you.
SubhanAllah, yes. Yeah.
Each one represents a naqla, like a, you know.
No, yeah, it actually did. It actually did. Because this competition here settled
international
things.
Now. There's not Lakemba Mosque, Sunnah Masjid anymore.
It was actually big international stuff, yeah. And it made things settle, you know. And you just, by saying this, you reminded me, there were other local Quran competitions in Australia that I also, attended. The one that was in Granville, another one was in Lakemba, and I went to all of them, subhanAllah. But this one was the first international one. And I remember we went from Mecca, and we had 1 day visit in Al-Madinah. They took us by bus. When we got there, they said a group from Jami'at al-Islamiyya fil Medina is going to come and interview whoever's interested in applying to Al-Madinah. And so I remember I put my hands up and I said I was interested. I wanted to apply to Al-Madinah. And they came and they interviewed us. And afterwards, about a year later, I received the yellow paper of acceptance. It was known among the students back then. It's a yellow paper they sent to your address. I received it, and I had finished school in Australia, and I began university. And I began a degree, Bachelor of Arts, Interpretation and Translation. That's what I was going to begin. But 1 month went past, and I got that letter, and I quit the university, and I went to Al-Madinah afterwards. And because my father had graduated from Al-Madinah as well, Kulliyat al-Da'wah. So I saw myself in that field. I saw myself in that path.
So now you've memorized the Quran, you've led with the Quran, but still you don't understand the Quran.
No.
Can you read at this point, by the time you got the yellow paper?
So it was not until I went to Al-Madinah
that your reading became fluent.
and started the 2 years of Arabic program. This is لغير الناطقين بها.
For non-Arabic
2 years.
speakers.
And I started from مستوى الأول. The مستوى الأول, which begins with a book that says هذا قلم. This is a pen. هذا and ذلك is the first thing you're learning. اسم الإشارة and so on. And I started from there. And these things were easy, like I'd understand. But it was excellent to just go through all of this for 2 years.
And your reading became fluent by the end of the 2 years.
Arabic became solid. And Nahu, I never knew what Nahu was.
Do you remember the first time you understood what was being recited? Or you stood behind the Imam so many times, you don't know what's being recited, but you feel the power of the words of Allah. It's something different, of course. No human.
The understanding of the words, I remember paying attention to them when they were read in Al-Khutbah. Because when my father was giving a khutbah, or another Sheikh was giving a khutbah, I'd pay attention to the ayah to say, I know this ayah, it's in the surah. I know this ayah, it's in this surah. And when he's talking after it, explaining something about the ayah, I'd pick on to say, all right, I never knew that this is what this means, So that did happen, that did happen. I can't remember examples now, but yeah, I'd pay attention because when the khatib is talking, like sometimes you get bored. You're not in tune. When he reads the ayah and you know it, your attentions come back in. And he reads the ayah and then he's speaking a few words afterwards, explaining, you'd pick up on what it means. Now, so that was at the beginning in how I attempted to start learning, but nothing active in terms of opening books of tafsir. That came later, other than what my father would explain to us. Because my father used to teach us as well the stories of the companions, the stories of the prophets. He went through all of this stuff with us at home, at night, before we slept.
So the story time was before sleeping and Quran time was after Fajr in the morning. That was the two contact times he had.
That's how we grew up, like that. And it's very important to notice and to mention that we had no TV at home. We had no TVs. We had no electronical devices. We had a computer my father used to use.
You were in a time where there was no television.
I think
this made a big difference.
Massive. My father did not bring a television to the house until 9/11. When September 11 happened, he brought a TV so that we can see the news and be up to date. Yeah. But there was no point for it even. Even then there was no point. But because everyone was talking about it, and he didn't even buy it.
Someone gave it.
We saw it on the road. Back then when people wanted to dispose of their unwanted property, they'd put it in the front yard. And then people would drive past and it said, if you like me, take me.
Interesting.
So we picked up the TV that's how much my father did not give any pay attention to these matters, no concern.
Now in your position now as a father of children, but your children are in a different world. They're in the world of TikTok and Roblox and Fortnite. And what lessons have you been able to apply? How hard do you find it for them with the distractions that they're available to them and the environments? You can't control. Kids go to school. You and me are not in control what happens at school. Yeah. They come home at 3, at 4. I heard this, that swear word, that curse word, this person. And you'll think I'm sending my child to a good environment or Quranic environment. But the environment betrays you. Right. And how have you found that?
Well, of course, the environment is very important. The environment is very important. Firstly, just on this point, Allah Azza wa Jal in the Quran, when He spoke about Ibrahim alayhi salam settling his family in Mecca, and the purpose and the reason for why he did this, He said, رَبَّنَا إِنِّي أَسْكَنْتُ مِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِي بِوَادٍ غَيْرِ ذِي زَرْعٍ عِنْدَ بَيْتِكَ الْمُحَرَّمِ رَبَّنَا لِيُقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ. He said, Oh Allah, I've settled some of my family at the sacred valley near your house. Why did you put them there? لِيُقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ. I've put them there, I've chosen this environment for them so that they can establish their salat. I've chosen this environment so that they can establish their deen and not be affected by anything else. So al-ayah is teaching you that where you're positioned, where you are, your environment will have a direct impact on your faith and how you establish the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal in your life. So it's very important to be aware of the surrounding, the environment, where you are, where your kids are, so that you ensure that they yuqimu as-salat, establish as-salat wal-Quran wal-deen. So we have rules in the house. There are electronical rules. My kids know, and they'll hear this and they'll know. On Friday, they get 1 hour on electronical devices. Whether it's the iPad, whether it's the PlayStation, whether it's TV. 1 hour. And on Saturday, 2 hours. And these 2 hours can't be together. 1 hour and then 1 hour. That's it. And for the rest of the week, including Sunday, there's nothing at all. Zero. Nothing. They've accepted that and we've moved on this. Maybe on Sunday there is an exception. If they do something as a bonus, I give them 1 hour bonus. And they have to be creative. I can't tell them what to do. They have to come and tell me, Masalan, we're going to memorize 5 abiyat from this manzuma, for example. Or we're going to revise 2 extra juz', for example. Then I'll assess. If it's worth it, I'll give them the hour extra.
You're there handing out handing out screen time as a bonus.
That's it. Aywa, like this. And we've been like this for almost 2 years now. We've worked on this plan. It's been great, you know. And of course, what you mentioned of the school, I need to know what's being learnt in school, what's being said, what happened. And the kids are going to be exposed to all this filth and all this corruption and whatever it is that happens, it's going to happen. I'm not upset that it happens, but I'll say, okay, listen, 1, 2, 3. What's wrong from this? What's right from this?
You put the ball in their court.
Yeah, of course. Because look, whether you like it or not, sooner or later they're going to be exposed to all this stuff. So I'd rather expose them to all these matters and explain it to them and then teach them what should be used, what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, what's not right, what's wrong, what's, you know. And alhamdulillah, my kids have memorized Quran, you know. They've memorized 18 juz' of the Quran. You know, you've got a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. So it's easier for me now to reference them back to ayat in the Quran, and we have lessons and we teach things and we learn. They know Manzumat al-Biri, which has a lot of things related to adab and discipline, and they've memorized Manzumat al-Akhlaq as well from Shaykh Abu Bakr Zoud that has about 60 or so adab, and we can always reference to these things, you know. So it makes it a lot easier for me. But you can't avoid these environments altogether.
You create a guidelines-based environment at home, and you regulate that environment for them, and you stay consistent with it.
Yeah.
Tell us about your relationship with Tarteel. When did that begin?
Subhanallah, the app at Tarteel, I came across this app as an advertisement somewhere, I don't know, and it was, I think I still remember it was in Ramadan, and it was advertised as a app that can listen to your recitation. And that's strange, you know, because every Quran app was basically doing the same thing. So I found that there's a unique feature in this one that wasn't found in any other app. So I downloaded it, and I tried the feature. There was a microphone button in the right, at the corner. Click it, and I began to read the ayat, and it follows. And initially it was amazing, because a lot of the times I would like to revise with someone. And for all the times, if you ask me, how do you like to revise? I'd always say, I'd love for someone to sit in front of me, carry a mushaf, and just follow through with me as I read. That's always my preference. To find this app, it was life-changing. The thing I always desire, now I've got in my own hands. So I remember I put it on the iPad, because the iPad's a little bit bigger, and it was just like a nice screen, and I screen mirror to my TV. So I have an even bigger screen. It's like someone sitting in front of me. And what was also good is that you can click, there's a feature in where you click the button and the ayat disappear off the page. And what you read begins to appear on the page. Fantastic. So you can actually look at the screen now, read, and you can just keep going. And subhanAllah, that was something unique. And from that day, up until this day, I continuously use the app, Tarteel. I had no clue who was behind it, what was the story behind it, who put it together. The idea was it was a beautiful app that now I can begin to revise, and I have been using it ever since. My way of revising was always to actually have the copy of the Quran in my hand. That's how I used to revise before Tarteel. I'd open my Quran, and I'd keep it with me. I'd look up and I'd revise.
But then you don't know when you've made a mistake because you're looking up.
Because I'm looking up. But your heart, will tell you that you've done something wrong here. Go check it up again. Now, since I discovered the app, I still have my Quran with me. I put it to the side, but I'm focused a lot more on the app. But I keep the Quran next to me. Why? Because I'd always like to see the page where the ayah is, where it begins, where it ends, and some of the notes I've got on the side. I've got some notes. I like to always just look at those notes and scan them, and move on, just so I can revise them. But the app has served an important role in my life now.
You travel a lot as well.
Yeah,
Does that make it?
I'd love it. I love it in travel. And I discovered something. When you read, there's a function in the app that tells you how much of the surah you've read, how much, with a green light. And
we call it the surah selector.
The surah selection, the top bar. It tells you how much of the surah you've recited. And I always thought...
This one here.
Yes, that's it. There it is. It tells you how much you've recited. If the whole thing's green, that means you've recited the whole thing. You move on to the next surah and so on. But I realized once I was going to Malaysia, and on the flight, there was absolutely no Wi-Fi at all, zero, no connection. And I said, I'm going to read, because I want it to actually listen to me so that it covers in green. But I said, the feature, I can't work with the feature now. There's no internet, so I'll just read. So I began to read. I left the page on, and I'd read, and then I'd flip. And I realized that if you stay on the page for like 30 or 40 seconds, it will count that as though you read it.
It counts as a part of your reading session.
SubhanAllah, I never knew that. I figured that out
the hard way. Nice.
Yeah. But then when I travel as well, when I land, I'm in the hotel, I'm using it now very, very, very often,
So it's your companion for your muraja'ah, for your revision.
Yeah, it's with me wherever I go, So even if I open the app now, you'd see how much time I've spent on the app. I'll just read from the app now. Basically, the Tarteel app has been with me from almost 2 years ago, up until this day. And I use it very frequently. So if I show you the statistics, that's an amazing feature here. If you were to click on activity, it says in the activity, if I scroll down, engagement, a lifetime, 312 hours of activity.
Yes, I know.
312 hours. It says verses recited, 113,895.
Ajib. It's nice. It gives you a full picture.
I'm using it every day, And then it says deeds estimated 81 million. We hope it's more.
They try and multiply.
MashaAllah. Now, alhamdulillah, and complete. I think in Ramadan as well, it gives a reward that if you complete the Quran, they'll donate a Quran on your behalf. That's beautiful to know.
RQGQ, recite the Quran, give a Quran.
Yeah, beautiful. That's
so there's
amazing.
a mushaf that's been donated on your behalf.
SubhanAllah, so that's amazing. So I haven't seen anything like it on the App Store, and it's very unique. And what's also beautiful is that it adds to previous apps. So everything that previous apps had, it has. So that's the thing of listening to the qira'ah, translation, tafsir, bookmark, copy, share the ayat, all these features are there. But then it adds on top of this the AI feature, in where you read and it will listen and it will bring up the ayah onto the screen. Subhanallah, amazing. You know, I even gave this as an advice to some of the brothers and sisters that would attend a Taraweeh in al-Masjid. And they want to follow behind the Imam. And of course, you know, in Salat al-Nafila, there are, it's a lot easier than Salat al-Fariḍah in terms of rulings and what you can do and the concessions that are in it. So I'd encourage them, grab a mushaf and open the Quran and follow with the Imam.
Through Tarteel, because you can tap the mic and it'll follow, it'll take you.
That was the idea. The idea was, yeah, but how do we know where he's reading from? Just press the mic and it will pick up where he's reading from, and wherever he's reading from, it will bring up the ayah. So then what you do, because they don't know Arabic and the qira'ah is going to be long, I said then you put the translation on. Put the translation. So you've got the Arabic and the translation.
And you're following the Imam with the translation.
And read the translation in your heart. Don't move your tongue. Because if you move your tongue while reading the English, you've invalidated your salat because you've said something other than what is legislated for the prayer.
Would you say this is quite groundbreaking that for the first time non-Arabic speakers can follow Taraweeh and follow the meaning live?
Groundbreaking.
I'm trying to think, did it ever exist before?
It didn't exist.
It didn't exist.
It never existed.
And it still doesn't exist, except...
No, it doesn't. Because now we're speaking about a matter you can do on your own without the assistance of anyone. Before, you'd need the assistance of someone. Like the Imam is going to read from here.
Hey, where's the Imam today? Do you know where he stopped?
You have to wait and not begin the salat until the Fatiha is finished.
You also have to carry like a translation, thick translation, find the right page.
Right. Yeah, you had to do all these things. Or if I'm praying with a friend. The friend wants to know. Masalan, نحن in Mecca. The friend wants to know. So we won't begin with the Imam. I need to wait until until Al-Fatiha is over to know then where he begins. Then help him find where here. Then we've started late. Now this feature, you begin from the very beginning. When the qira'ah begins, click the microphone. The ayah will be recited. It will appear on your screen. Khalas. As soon as the ayah appears, you can have the format or the layout where the Arabic is here and right underneath it is the English. So read that English in your heart and don't move your tongue with the English.
And you can follow the...
And you're fine.
And for the first time, you can actually stand behind the Imam and you know what is being recited.
You know what's being recited. You're connecting on another level.
Ajib.
And you're reading the translation while in salat. So there is no distraction. There's optimal focus. And you're going to connect with the Quran in salat a lot more different than if you were to read the Quran outside of salat. The connection with the Quran in salat is different to outside salat.
In salat, at night, in Taraweeh, in Ramadan, the connection will be another level. But for the longest time, non-Arabic speakers have been barred from connecting with the meanings, at least in salah.
Well, because they don't know. Yeah. The Quran's being recited, they don't know what's being recited. And what the Imam doesn't have the time after the salat to explain what he recited. People want to pray, people want to move.
Yeah.
How beautiful is this? Now, you can actually go to a masjid that reads one juz' a night, have the Tarteel AI app with you, open it up from the very beginning. As soon as the ayah is recited, it will pick it up, and then you begin to look at the translation. And you will be able to cover the entire translation from the beginning to the end throughout the entire month of Ramadan.
That's amazing.
And that's you listening to the Quran once, and then during the day you can have your own recitation of the Quran once as well. Like what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would yudaris al-Quran with Jibreel. He'd study the Quran with Jibreel, meaning he'd read and then he'd listen to Jibreel also reciting. So how beautiful is that to do? And all possible by the permission of Allah Azza wa Jal and with apps like Tarteel AI.
Ajib.
Unbelievable.